Welcome back to Sultan Plays, and this week we're doing yet another tank Kitbash. I picked up this Land Raider second hand and I wanted to give it some love because it's clearly been sat on a shelf for some time, really not doing anything, and I thought, based on the new assault ramp rules, that the Black Templars absolutely needed this. Step 1 was to clean everything up, and step 2 was to choose which variant I wanted. I ended up going for the Redeemer version, which is, massive flamers. And I know the Crusader is essentially the Black Templars tank, but there's something about just running forward, flaming everything, and throwing a bunch of guys out the front that's just epic. So I had to go for that. With the sponsons and doors attached, I used this 3D printed multi-melter for the pintle mount, because no Land Raider, especially a Black Templars one, is complete without a multi-melter. I took 2 braziers from March of War and stuck them to the back of the tank. I'm going full Grimdark Holy with my Black Templars Land Raider because I've done it with all my other Black Templars tanks, and it's totally worthwhile. They look so unique on the tabletop. I've actually got another video linked in the top right now if you want to go check that out. There's meant to be a little radar dish on top of this guy, but it's been lost at some point in the past, so I took the big one from the Impulsor kit and added it to the top here. Next up, to add some decoration to the front, I took this 3D printed open book, which I printed for my sisters, but I thought it would look excellent here. In fact, whenever you're kit bashing Black Templars or sisters, a lot of the kits are pretty much interchangeable, especially when it comes to relics and books. With a few of the smaller details done, I wanted to do something big on top. I was thinking initially of some kind of altar, but then I found this sister I'd kit bashed a while ago, and I added some 3D printed wings to her and thought that she'd be an excellent statue. Again, Sisters and Black Templars kits, pretty much interchangeable, and it would make sense that the Templars would worship a saint, as well as the Emperor. I had some ideas of where I wanted this statue to go, to be some kind of standard they carry into battle, but, painted in marbly style colours. So I took this Vexilla I had spare from a Custodes kit, and after dropping her several times, because I have the clumsiest hands I've ever known, I glued her to the top. I used a fair amount of super glue and then a little bit of activator to stick her to the top. I considered pinning, and we will be doing some of that in a minute, but for this I just built up the glue and then the activator did the rest. With her safely attached to the top, the next step was to remove the bottom part. There's a twin-headed eagle on the bottom of the pole, which doesn't really work for our purposes, so I snipped that clear and prepared the surface for some pinning. I had to figure out where she was going to sit, so I drilled a pilot hole into the top of the Land Raider with my electric drill. Then in the bottom of the standard, I drilled another hole to fit some 1mm wire. I was a little off centre initially, so I decided to cut a little bit more of the plastic away and try again. Better to get it right and have an ever so slightly shorter standard than to get it wrong and have an off-centre one. I went slowly with this, but I made sure to go in a couple of millimeters. This is so that the wire has something to actually grip. If you only go in 1 or 2 millimeters, there's almost no point pinning. So I went in about 5mm to allow the wire to grip something. For my pins, I've always used these paper clips covered in some weird plastic sheathing. They're just cheap and easy, and I already had them, though you can get spools of 1mm and 3mm wire if you need. Using super glue, I attached the wire to the bottom of the standard and then attached her to the tank in turn. She was at a bit of a weird angle as I attached her to the tank, so I used that wire to bend the standard forward. You can do this nice and quick before the glue dries, and the metal's quite pliable, so it's actually a safer way of doing this than bending the plastic. Now you've probably noticed she's a little bit wobbly, so I decided to add another character to the statue, in this case a Marine. Classically a Black Templar for a Black Templars tank. So I kitbashed some Mark III legs with some Forge World Mark II torso armour. I want this guy to be holding the standard in order to further support it in real life, and also because a statue with a really thin pole would be very susceptible to breaking, especially when people are shooting at it. I added the grenade throwing arm from the Assault Intercessor kit, but I'd cut off the hand to replace with a normal fist. Now, I considered using some cutting and pinning to actually attach the standard to this guy's hand, but ultimately I decided against it because even though it would look a little bit better, it would be really structurally unsound. So I decided to basically have him put his hand behind it. Even though it doesn't look 100% perfect, I can suspend my disbelief. It will still look fine in the final product. After a quick dry fit, I attached the Marine to the back to make sure that the standard would actually be held up, and the wobbling decreased significantly at this point. For the Marine's other arm, I wanted him to be holding a power sword into the air, like he's yelling a challenge or celebrating a victory. It's a statue after all. So I reached into the Deathwatch Veterans Kit and pulled out a couple of arms. The first one wasn't great, but the second one was almost perfect. It just needed a slight alteration. I cut the sword off at the wrist and rotated it slightly before attaching it again with super glue. I used super glue because it's just faster in this instance. Small changes like this can really help a model stand out, and it also makes it completely your own. This entire statue on the back of the tank is kitbashed, and there probably won't be much like it elsewhere in the world. If you do something similar with your tank, you'll have a one-of-a-kind piece of art. Or piece of crap, am I right? I'm not right. With the alterations now successfully complete, we can add the arm to the Marine. Once that was attached and looking good, we can add the power pack and a helmet. The power pack is nothing of note, but I took the helmet from the Primaris Sword Brethren kit. If you're a Black Templar player, you need to pick up that kit. It's amazing. With the statue now looking good and also being structurally sound, it's time for a little bit of housekeeping in that we need to drill out the barrels of the assault cannons and add a few little bits of stowage here and there. It's not a salt and place tank without a little bit of stowage, or a lot of bit of stowage. But before that, we need to add some chain. It's a Black Templars tank after all, and nothing screams Grimdark quite like yards and yards of chain. I don't know the specific size of this chain, but it's just some small chain, usually used for jewellery, picked up from my local hobby store. You can find it wherever you live, I'm sure. It's also worth gluing the chain down all over to make sure it doesn't scratch up your paint, and also keeps it simple for you to paint. Next up, some stowage. I'm using these resin shell cases, which I believe are from March of War from his tank stowage kits, and I used one on either side in the end and also added some jerry cans, also available from March of War. Adding stowage is always an excellent thing to do for any tank, especially to make it Grimdark, because it just adds more colour but also more opportunities for weathering and making things look dirty. In this case, the paint job is going to be quite clean, but stowage will still add tons of different spot colours, which is always amazing because variety is the spice of life and hobbying. After arranging these jerry cans in an aesthetically pleasing manner, I went onto the other side and added some stowage from the Sentinel kit from the Imperial Guard. I also grabbed a bunch of candles because Black Templars love candles, they like praying after all. These are also from March of War and they're great, they're just tons of candles in one space. I got 2 of these and put them on both sides of the tank. This will also allow me to add some object source lighting later. Kitbashing tanks is one of my favourite things to do in this hobby, and this was no exception. I hope you enjoyed this video and hopefully it inspired you to kitbash some of your own stuff. I've been Sam, see you next time.